Reality is manifested based on your identity. And most people believe they don't have next level wealth because they haven't done enough. Not being able to attract the higher level of wealth is not based on what you're doing and not doing. It is based on the identity you are holding. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to be so complete in your wealth identity that lack energetically has nowhere to land, because ultimately this is the deepest work that is required for you to shift into your wealth identity permanently in order to become magnet to wealth, abundance, and success. So this is the wealth identity method that I'm going to take you deeper into. So one of the first thing, in order to really tap into that wealth identity, that you are no longer moving from lack and limitation, but actually moving from abundance. So what we have to understand is that the world that we live in, it's an observed reality. That is the first thing we have to understand. The world we are living in, moving in, experiencing, and witnessing, it is the observed reality. And I want to take you higher than the observed reality, because what is being observed, it is already being created. Ultimately, the world that we are witnessing, the 3D reality, that is an observed reality that has already manifested, created, and then we are able to see it. So that's one thing you have to understand. We have to go beyond what is already created in order to shift you into wealth and abundance. So beyond this 3D, the physical plane, we have the intellectual plane. Intellectual plane is, I want you to see it as the mind receiving insight, mind receiving ideas. The intellectual plane is when we are able to imagine, when we are able to get ideas, when we are able to think through things. That is an intellectual plane. And most people are stuck in this intellectual plane. But we are, as a multi-dimensional being, we are beyond intellectual plane. We are actually from a spiritual plane. That is our true essence of being. This is where we were created, in a spiritual plane. So we have to get here in order to move into wealth identity. So this plane we have to really get familiar with. We have to understand this plane in order to start creating a new reality for ourselves. So the spiritual plane, that people call it 5D, but ultimately there's beyond 5D, there's 60, 70, 90. I mean, there's an infinite dimension that is within spiritual plane. We don't know exactly how many dimensions are there, but there are, let's say, infinite dimensions that we are not humanly aware of. But most people talk about 5D. So let's talk about that. So fifth dimension and beyond, it is the dimension of creation. That's where the world was created. That's where the creation occurred. And when the world was created in the highest plane, it was then became physical. That became the observed reality. So as a human being, we are spiritual first. The soul came first before the physical body. The soul arrived first. This is why the soul level, the higher level, the spiritual level matters, because that is the essence of our being. So when we understand this as a soulful spiritual being having that human experience, most people, they stay stuck in the 3D. They think this is their reality. What they're observing, the observed world, is a reality. They operate from that. And in most cases, people go into intellectual plane. Most people who are actually doing the inner work, who are focused on the mindset and shifting their mindset, they are operating from intellectual plane. They are shifting their mind, they're shifting the way they think. That is an intellectual plane. But beyond that, we have to go beyond that. That is your truth. That is your essence. So when we are in a spiritual plane, that is 5D or beyond, we are creating a new reality here. And the new reality, when it is created, that's when it gets manifested in the 3D reality. Therefore, nothing in observed world is creation. It is created. It is manifested. That's why creation doesn't occur in the 3D. In order to create the new level of wealth, so let's say you are making $10,000 or $5,000 a month and you want to create that 20, 30, 50, $100,000 a month, right? You have to come here. You have to move here. Energetically, through your frequency, through your imagination, you have to move here in order to create a new reality. That's the number one thing. We must move from 3D to 5D. That is where we create. But before we create that, I want to talk about what is happening within human psyche and human being that keep them in limitation, that keep them stuck, that keeps them in that survival mode, that does not allow them to move there. So I will go deeper into that. But before we go, we must understand our own physical being, that why we can't move into that higher level of wealth and abundance and create that millions and millions of dollars and open ourselves for new possibilities. So we have to understand, as a being, we are holding a lot of information within our body. People usually just work here, their mindset, their intellectual mind, how they can be more productive, how they can be more focused, how they can have more knowledge, more wisdom, how they can learn new things, how they can learn the tactics, the strategies. They work on the mind. What they forget is the body. I mean, of course, the body doesn't look like that, but ultimately what I'm trying to show you here, the body holds every single memory, the body holds every single events that somebody has gone through. It moves into the body energetically, emotionally, cellularly, subconsciously. When people say subconscious mind, and that's something people probably don't talk about a lot, but subconscious mind is actually the autopilot is your body. The conscious is here, but the subconscious operate from your body, because whatever mind feeds information is, it takes it to the subconscious, and then it programs the body. That's why the body is actually subconscious. It moves subconsciously. So for example, when you learn to drive, you initially find it really difficult, really hard, and it takes you a while and maybe a few months to really learn to drive. But ultimately, when you keep practicing, and you have years and years of experience in driving, sometimes you reach your destination and you're like, oh my God, I wasn't even thinking about driving, and I was just autopilot, automatically driving, avoiding all the hazards, and I reached my destination and I wasn't even thinking about it. Have you had those moments? That is because you were operating on autopilot subconsciously. Subconsciously, your body was programmed to understand how to drive, right? That's why your body is the source of you alchemizing and moving yourself into the higher level of being. That comes from your body, not just the mind. Mind is important, but the body is the key. It is the key of you shifting into the next level of wealth, next level of being who you meant to be, who you desire to be. So what I want you to know is the body holds all the events that you probably went through, anything traumatic, anything that was undesirable, anything that you went through. And our body, I want you to see it energetically, emotionally. There are different parts of our body. So it's not just one body. The body itself has different parts energetically that holds information and that holds memory to either to move us in towards happiness and joy, or to move us towards sadness and anger, resentment. So those parts within our body, even if you look at psychologically, they talk about that our body has different parts, that we hold memory, that we hold events. So energetically and emotionally, there are different parts within your body. So there's part of you that may be operating in unworthiness, not enoughness. There's part of you that may be operating in anger. There's part of you that is operating in hate or guilt or shame. And there's a part of you that is in joy, operating in joy. But majority, the dominant emotion and energy within the body is mostly operating in that negative frequency, negative energy, because of the past experiences, because not feeling enough. And whatever our body emotionally and energetically operating in, it is giving feedback and rewiring our mind, but also our cellular system, our nervous system, our subconscious. It is all being programmed and reprogrammed for the same events and the same pattern. Because what happens when something happens to somebody, let's say they had a negative experience in their life, so the body goes into shock or trauma, and then it holds that memory deeply. It has a strong emotion attached to that memory. So it stores in the nervous system, in the cellular system, in our subconscious mind, and the body start rewiring, the mind start rewiring and reprogramming it to remain and to keep that memory alive, because it feels like a threat, something that needs to be remembered. Otherwise, it may happen again. So the body, to create that safety for you, it keeps that memory. But ultimately, it does not serve us, because it keeps us limited, it keeps us stuck. So, for example, when I was 14 years old, I took this beauty contest in my school, and I went on stage, and I had no thinking, I had no planning. I did not think it was, for me, it was like, oh, it's just a fun thing. I'm just going to go on stage and I'm just going to pose and that's it. I had no thinking behind it. As a 14-year-old, I was very innocent and naive. I did not even think about it. I was like, oh, I'm just going to dress up, I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to walk on stage. That's about it. I participated in the beauty contest without knowing much about what happens. So when I went on the stage as a 14-year-old, and the whole school was there, probably around 1,000 people or more, I'm not sure. It was a big school and everyone was there. So we did that round of posing and walking on the stage, and then after that I was selected in top 10, and I didn't even think about that. That's how naive I was. That did not even occur to me that I will be selected. So I was selected in top 10, and the top 10 would obviously, now I know, but at that time as a 14-year-old I had no idea. I had to obviously speak on stage, and the judges were going to ask questions. Ultimately, when they did ask me question, I became numb. I froze. I could not speak. The word did not come out. That was the first experience being on stage and holding a mic as a 14-year-old. Never done that before. I was very shy, introverted, and suddenly everyone is waiting for me to speak. Everyone was quiet, waiting for me to be heard, and my legs were shaking. I had no idea what they asked. My ears were ringing. I had no idea what they asked me. I had no idea what I had to say. So that became such a shocking memory for me, because I could not speak. And then the girl behind me or on the side, the moderator, she started saying things, like she was like trying to help me, but I don't know what she was saying. So I just blurt out something. I don't know what I blurt. I have no memory of it because it was so traumatic for me. So I said something and everyone laughed. So, as a 14-year-old, that memory was stored in my body, that if I speak in front of people, they will laugh at me. There's no way that I can speak in front of people. There's no way. That memory was very, very shocking. 1,000 people laughing at you at the same time as a 14-year-old. It was traumatic for me. So, what happened? I became even more introverted. I became even more quiet. That became my identity. That's why we're talking about that. That became my identity, that Sadaf is somebody who's quiet, who's shy, who doesn't speak. So, this is why this work is so important for me, and speaking is so much important to me, because that identity that I was operating from for years, for years. I mean, I only started this work only 5 years ago, but ultimately before that, I was never in front of camera. I was never putting myself out there. So I was always hiding in the meetings, in any type of event. I would never put myself out there because of that 14-year-old girl was still hidden within me, in that shock, in that traumatic memory, and feeling ashamed, feeling less than, feeling unworthy, right? So I was in that I'm not worthy enough to speak. I'm not worthy enough to speak. Therefore, people will abandon me, people will reject me, people will laugh at me. Therefore, I must remain quiet. If you speak to anyone who knew me back then, or even last 10 years ago, they would say, like, I'm usually very quiet. They would say that I'm very quiet person, like I don't speak. So that was the identity I was operating in, somebody who does not speak. So from there to here, I had to alchemize that identity. I had to release that unworthiness, that shame, right? Because with unworthiness, there's also shame that people laughed at me. I felt embarrassed. So I kept operating from that unworthiness, shame, and also anger, not about other people, but for myself. I was angry with myself. So that another part of me was angry, like, why did I do that to myself? Why did I cause myself so much humiliation, right? So I was in anger. I was also in judgment, right? Do you see? There's so much complex emotion behind that one event that I talked about. And I've gone through a lot of different things in my life. That's just one event I'm talking to you about. So I was very angry, and also a part of me hated myself for not being good enough, for making mistake, for not being able to speak up, for not knowing what to say. Why was I so naive? So I judged myself. I was like, why didn't I not prepare myself? Why didn't I know that? But I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know. So all of these things are within, as different parts of me operating within me. And all of those things created that identity of me, who's shy, who does not speak, who stutter, who every time. So even when I worked for investment banking, my self-esteem was very low. Even then, I was operating from very low self-esteem initially when I started. And I would stutter, not because I had any stuttering or speech issues, but I stuttered because of lack of self-belief, lack of worthiness. I would stutter. So that was my identity: shy, cannot speak, and stutter. So I was molding myself in that identity over and over, because I kept feeling less than. I kept thinking that I make mistake every time I speak. Therefore, that was perpetuating over and over to confirm that identity, that I stutter, that I have issue with speaking, that I cannot speak, that I make mistakes. Do you see? The mind keeps saying that because it has these memory and emotion and energy to back that evidence, right? It's keep evidencing, keep looping. I call that subconscious looping. You're subconsciously looping to the same pattern, to the same programming, therefore operating in the same identity over and over. Does that make sense? So in order to shift that, in order to reprogram that, we must alchemize, do the deeper core work, energy work, emotional work, to release these patterns that are operating in those memories, that are anchored in that identity. Because that became the anchor. The enough time you repeat the same thing, you do the same thing, you play the same memory, it becomes your identity, it becomes your anchor. You start identifying yourself as that. So if you been making $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, that is the identity that has been anchored within you, that has created that reality for you, that you as an individual who makes 5,000 or 10,000 a month, you cannot go beyond that, because that is the identity, the evidence that has been given over and over to confirm that. And we want to move from that lack, right? We talk about we want to get to a place where lack can't even find you. So how can we do that? There are so many ways to do that. One of the ways that I do with my clients is to really take them into that theta brainwave. So the work that I do energetically, the intuitive work, the energy work that I do in terms of deep healing work, I take them to their theta brainwave. They go into their theta state. When we go into the theta state, we release those memories that has been stored, that has been programmed, that has been an anchor. And when we release those memory and we create a positive association to their being, to create that new energetic and emotional belief around who they are, to have more discernment, to have more love, to have more abundance, to move into that state of being, that's when they shift. By the way, if you want to work with me, you can click the link below to apply for my mentoring. There are still few spots available for June, so you can click below to apply. But ultimately, that theta brainwave is the state of hypnosis. It's a state where you move from that energy and frequency, where you are in a half sleep and half awakened state, where your mind feels very relaxed, your body feels very relaxed, you feel like you're in a different space. It feels very, very different. That's why when people do this work with me, they feel very different even after one session, because they moved into that state that is no longer identifying with these memories or these emotions or these energies. They moved into the new level of being. So this is why when you shift all of these things, you move into a new level of being. Because when you no longer identify with what has happened, most people, they stay stuck in this 3D because the story they keep telling themselves over and over, the story of this happened to me, that happened to me, I went through this, I went through that, and that story can recreating the same memory, therefore recreating the same life, the patterns. And that's why people stay stuck in the same pattern. They cannot break free from it, because it's the same thing over and over. It's like reliving their past. And that's why people cannot move, because they keep reliving it. They use their intellectual plane, intellectual mind, to recreate their past memory. So they recreate the unworthiness, they recreate the anger, they recreate the guilt, they recreate the shame, they recreate the hate, right? They're recreating, and that is what is manifesting in their physical reality. They're not even going there. They're just keep looping here, constantly looping. And that's where the reality remains the same. Nothing changes. In order to change, where lack is no longer exist and wealth becomes your identity, you must create, like, first of all, first step is, like I said, alchemize. Alchemy state, move into alchemy state through doing the deep inner work, releasing all these anchors, all these parts that are working against you, that is not serving you, because this is impacting your wealth. This is impacting the abundance you desire, because money is a reflection of the identity you hold. Right? So if the identity holds unworthiness, it holds anger, judgment, hate, shame, then it will block money. It will block that abundance. So this is why the deeper work to release, to move into the higher level of being, in order to create more, in order to move from that new version of you that does not have that idea that people laughed at me and shamed me and humiliated me. I could change that story and then tell myself that was a sign that I am made for stage. That was a sign that I meant to be a speaker. That was the sign, that was the journey, that was the learning for me to become a speaker. I can change the story. When I change the story, it becomes the new story. It becomes the new reality because the way I see, that's what I create in my physical reality. So I can use that as an anchor for me to become a most powerful speaker in the world. So once you alchemize, once you release these state, these emotions, these energies within, holding within you, once you alchemize that, that's when you can start creating the new level of being. So instead of operating from what you see, operate from what you desire. So, what does that mean? So, instead of focusing on that you are making $5,000 a month, focus on that you are making $30,000 a month. Focus on that because the world is created on the 5D. The creation happens here. You are the creator of your reality. And that's why this law is extremely important. The law of assumption. The law of assumption is that whatever you assume, that will become your truth. Whatever you assume. So, what are you assuming will be your reality? So, instead of assuming that $5,000 a month, assume $30,000 a month. Assume that, create that, magnetize that, move from that. So, the person, the identity that has $30,000 a month, what do they do? How do they operate? A $5,000 person who's making $5,000 person, they might worry about money, they might stress about money, they might save money and hold money, they might not want to spend money. But somebody who operates from $30,000 a month, how do they see money? How do they use money? How do they easily spend money? How do they feel about money? Do they worry when they go to bed? No. $30,000 a month person does not worry about money. Right? The association, the emotional association, when you start creating that emotional association with that $30,000 version of you that is operating from that identity and having that emotion is so key in this. You have to understand that your emotions are the one that can create that deeper anchor. And the reason traumatic events are so deeply congruent in our cellular system, nervous system, and subconscious, because there's strong emotion attached to it. Deep, strong emotion. And this is why people cannot manifest what they want, because they don't have strong emotion associated with their manifestation. They don't have a strong emotion. That's why they keep visualizing, but they cannot have it because they have zero emotion attached to it. Maybe a little bit, yeah, I feel excited, I feel this, but they don't have that deep emotional shift within them when they think about that $30,000 or when they think about that villa. They don't feel that deeper emotion, and that's why they cannot shift it, because that emotion part is extremely key in creating that truth for yourself. So $30,000 identity that is creating that amount of money every single month. How do they feel? How do they move? How do they speak? How do they show up? What do they create? What kind of things are they creating? And when you start moving from that, you are here. You are on spiritual plane. You are creating a new world for yourself. When you start creating a new world and assuming that new reality, that 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, right? You start moving from that. That's when you start creating that shift. But the catch is, if you haven't done any deeper work, ultimately you will fall back to this over and over, because this is so congruent within your core. This needs to shift. When you shift that, you are no longer in lack. The lack frequency speaks, I don't have. I don't have it, therefore I'm not worthy of it. The abundant frequency says, I am abundant regardless. I am abundant regardless of what is happening in my 3D. I am abundant regardless what I have in my bank account. I am abundant. I am already making hundreds and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. I am already that. And when we can move from that, identity, from that energy, we are creating a new reality. That is what co-creation is. Co-creation is consciously creating a new reality for yourself and then observing it in your 3D. Most people, they get stuck here. They think that they have to be able to see it. If they are not seeing it, it's not working. But actually, 95% is unseen. 5% is seen. 95% of creation happens in the unseen, not the unknown. You have to know. This is why the self-belief, the radical self-belief is important in order to believe in that $30,000, believe in that higher level of wealth, whether 30,000 or million. I know people who make million a month. That is their reality. That is their observed reality. They make million a month. So when somebody is making million a month, what is their identity? What is their way of being? How they think? Are they worried about what has happened to them in the past? Are they sad about what happened? Possibly not, because they've done, especially people who are consciously creating, who are shifting themselves from in a conscious place. They are not worried. They are not operating from lack. Some people say, well, why then how come people who are bad, how come they are wealthy? Well, wealth is not about good or bad. What you have to understand, the spiritual plane, the higher plane, there's no judgment. There's no judgment based on if you're good or bad. We are talking about conscious creation, co-creation of wealth and abundance, manifesting it. That is a very active way of shifting yourself, doing the inner work, moving from that place. But people who have money, but they haven't done any inner work, but they are wealthy because they have a different idea of wealth. Their family, their environment may have had different experiences, right? So they come from wealth, or they created more wealth. They don't have to work on their inner work. They don't have to manifest it in the way that we are talking about as a co-creator, right? And that's why people who have accumulated wealth because of their family, or accumulated wealth because it came to them easily, they suffer from depression, or they suffer from this burnout. Like Elon Musk, he's always burnt out. He's always burnt out. He's always kind of moving from that sickness because he's just losing his mind, because he is not aware of this. He's not aware of this. He's not moving from that. And that's why the wealth is there, but the state of being, the vitality, the health, the happiness and joy is not there, because he's not aware of this. He's unaware. Yes, he has created through this a lot of abundance. He has created it, but he is not fully in alignment with his truth. And that creates suffering, that creates pain, that creates different issues in life. That's why a lot of wealthy people are depressed. They are not happy, content, fulfilled with their life, because they are disconnected with their true essence. Here we are talking about how to be whole and wealthy. Complete being that is magnetizing, that is manifesting, that is creating that life consciously from a true essence of being. That is how you do it. And this is sustainable. When you can move from that, you are sustaining your health, your joy, and wealth. You're sustainably growing because you are tapping into the higher consciousness, higher dimensions. And you are co-creating from that. You're moving from that. And that creates very congruent and aligned way of building wealth, abundance in a very highest level. So this is why this work is not, it's not for everyone, but people who are ready to master themselves, to do the deeper inner work, to feel whole, complete, fulfilled, free from the inside out. This is the work for them. And not everyone does that. Not everyone, a lot of people want to manifest things, but not a lot of people are willing to do the inner work. They want to do it easily and effortlessly. Easy and effortless comes It is an easy and effortless way, but when you let go of the past that has been holding you back, when you alchemize the past, when you shift completely congruently on the next level, and this is why today I can speak up. Girl who did not speak for years, who stuttered, who could not even have a conversation, had such a lack of self belief and limitations, unworthiness. Now she can show up and speak up in front of hundreds and thousands of people easily and effortlessly because she has different identity than who she was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Completely different identity. So that identity came when everything else was alchemized that was not serving me, to move into creation state, and from that creation state magnetizing and moving from that energy rather than observed reality, because the observed reality is not the truth. This is the truth. This is not seen, but it is your highest truth. This is your highest truth, not the 3D, not the physical, but actually spiritual. The higher level of you, that is your truth, even though you can't see it, but this is who you are. When you start tapping into that higher level of you, that how she moves, how she operates, how she creates, what kind of business, what kind of idea, what kind of way she moves, what kind of stages she speaks, what kind of books she writes, you then move into that identity, and then 3D will respond. The lack will not exist in your life because 3D responds to this, whatever's being created. And once it's created, it shows up in your 3D reality. And when it shows up, you move from that. You create more, you create more. There's infinite potential there, right? There's no limitation. It's not just 30,000. You can move to 300,000. You can move to 3 million. You can keep moving. You can keep moving up and up. You keep creating. You keep creating and you keep moving. This is your truth. This isn't. This is already done. This is already the past. It's already done. So this is where you have to be on a daily basis, on a 24/7 basis. You must move from that. And how you can do that, you can also think about the house you want to live in. Start living in that house already in your 5D, in your creation, in your mind, in your imagination. Live and cook and be in that house, in this moment. Be it here energetically. Visualize, live in that, do the work in that house. Really see it clearly. And when you can see it clearly, living in that house, you are actually creating it. You are creating that bank account. You are creating that house. You are creating that life by being in here, not here. That's how you let go of the lack completely and you embody your wealth identity by releasing the core and alchemizing that regulates your nervous system, that heals your cellular system, that reprograms your subconscious. You heal that and then you move into creation, complete creation. And because then you don't have no doubt, no fear, you keep creating from that belief, from that faith. It is done. It is done. I am that. I am that who makes $30,000 a month. I am that who makes $1 million a month. I am that. And when you move from that truth, but you have to believe it. If you don't believe it, that means the deeper work hasn't been done. You have to believe it in order to create it. And when you believe it, you create it and you move from it. Your wealth becomes your identity. And that cannot be denied. The opportunities come, the money comes, the love comes, everything starts coming because you are operating from that higher level of truth. And that higher level of truth releases all fear, releases all doubt, releases all judgment, anger, right? So if this resonated with you and you want to go and do the deeper work to move into that, embody that wealth identity, understand what money is. Most people don't even understand and they operate from scarcity and lack. If you want to deeply understand how money works, to heal all these deeper core wounds that are anchoring you in survival mode, that are limiting your income, then you can click the link below to apply for my mentoring. And with that, like this video if you like this video and subscribe to my channel, and may the light in me reaches the light in you.